All right, I am super excited because we have someone I just met in person just a few days ago in New York City. Lisa Morris, welcome to the Leaders Who Care series.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Well, it's our privilege. I mean, I know you're a leader who cares already, but now we're going to show the rest of the world that you really are a leader who cares and why. So, best place to start is always if you could briefly introduce yourself. And I'm talking about like who Lisa is, not what you do. Guys are terrible at that. I say, who are you? And they give me their title and their job description. But where you're from originally, where you are now, whatever you want to say about family, something you've never told anybody you want to reveal to the world now, that's always fun. You don't have to do that, but it's an option. Yeah, just share.
I'm sure. So I am Lisa Morris, originally from Long Island, New York, but I blocked it out. So I just say I'm a proud New Yorker. Um, I would define myself as a voice for the voiceless in general. Always try to stand up for the vulnerable, whether kids or animals or just adults that struggle. I am a really strange Renaissance sort of a human. Went from theater actor to businesswoman to investor, um, just all around jack of all trades, master of none.
That is totally inaccurate, by the way. But we'll let you play with that for a while. So with all that said, then, what were you like as a kid or a teenager? Were you the female version of Michael J. Fox on Family Ties, who was always into business, or were you an
I,
acting back then? Or what were you doing?
yeah, I was definitely not, although I loved Alex P. Keaton. I had a crush on him, but that's because opposites attract. I was the anti-capitalist. I was a hippie child. I was in theater since I was about 5 years old. I was always a rebel. I was a nonconformist. I did not believe in any way in caring about clothes or caring about status. I always sort of was I would say kind of the weird band kid that wasn't in band.
Oh.
I was a friend to the kids in band.
Oh, cool. Well, that's good because they needed friends,
True.
and stuff. So.
No, I was a nerd. I was a hippie nerd. I was a hippie nerd theater kid. But I was very lucky. I had a good childhood. I had parents who actually loved me and lots of friends. And I went to summer camp, which was the highlight of my life as a young person.
Why is that?
It was just a chance to be free. I've always been independent, and so I never liked any rules or regulations. And obviously, as a child, you have parents and school and places where they could tell you what to do. And camp was sort of the place to be free and wear a lot of flannel and do a lot of experimenting with guys that played guitar.
Were
Good
you were you Jenny on Forrest Gump?
time. A little bit, actually. But I was a lot nicer. She was
Oh,
mean to Forrest. She didn't really deserve him.
yeah, she was mean and whatnot, but she had her own issues and type of thing. But that floated into my head when you said that. Um, Super cool. So you did have an unusual, I guess, or you definitely had a different college experience. Can you, how did you end up like with at Skidmore? Tell us a little bit about this story.
Yeah, so my degree is from Skidmore, but I never really went to Skidmore. So I actually graduated high school early. So I graduated high school when I was 16. And so when I went to college, I went to University of Texas at Austin, hook 'em. And so there I was, a little New York Jew showing up in Austin, Texas. And this was in the 90s. Now Austin's gotten a little bit more incoming. But back then, there weren't a lot of New Yorkers that chose to go to UT.
Yeah.
Uh, so I went there for one semester. And then, unfortunately, my best friend back home had cancer, and it was evident that she wasn't going to make it. So I took a semester off to go home and be with her. And I had planned to go back to school, but after she passed away, I ended up getting cast in my first tour of theater tour. And I thought, well, why am I getting a degree in music from Texas when I could get paid to do music right now? So I went on tour. And the reality is, back then, this was before the internet, there were no colleges that you could get like a legitimate degree while being a touring artist. other than NYU Gallatin, which still exists, and Skidmore University Without Walls, which no longer exists. But they were the two pioneering program from legitimate schools where you could be a working adult on tour and still get your degree. So I ended up switching to Skidmore. Mainly it was cheaper than NYU. And so I'm proudly have a degree from Skidmore, but really when I think of college, I think of UT because that's where I was on campus.
You should have like an alumni thing for Skidmore and see who shows up. And I don't know where you'd have it because you said it's no longer, right?
No, Skidmore exists, just the
Yeah,
University of Walls program doesn't. And so I
right.
think it's fascinating that all of the universities now have a program, an online program. And that was one of the few that started it and doesn't anymore. So it's interesting how that happens. But it was a great experience to get to work with the professors I worked with because you'd had to work one on one. Back then, again, there was no internet. So every lesson I had to write a paper and mail it, snail mail it in, wait for them to snail mail me back my comments. So it took years to get my degree. I was doing it from tour buses, hotels, cruise ships wherever I was at school.
But
Yeah.
what a great experience, though. That probably even helped you with whatever you had to hand into school because you were living it.
You had to learn so much more too. Like, if you went to class, you could just sit in the back and ignore it, right? Or skip class entirely. But because every lesson had to be accounted for with a one-on-one paper, I had to do twice as much work. And you had to really learn the material because it was just you and a professor. So there was no one to hide behind.
It kind of it's different, but kind of reminds me my one of my sons I mentioned he was an actor and my two younger boys went to a school that was for actors and sports people that had to be so the school had to be flexible when there was auditions or games or shows or this and that and teach them and on set they had to have a teacher there and so on. But the point I guess the point I was making was you're living the education while you're out there and you have to do the work of doing it, but you're also living it.
Yeah, and also look, I got to live in Germany. I got to meet so many people from so many places. I really travel's the best education out there, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The more places you live, the more people you meet, the more you learn. And actually, I picked up enough German doing cats of all things that I ended up getting 12 credits of college German I could place out of just from the competency. So that saved me a lot of time and money.
Achtung bitte. That's what I know. I remember that from being in the Berlin Convention Center, and constantly it was Achtung bitte, Achtung bitte, and yes, please, for those who don't understand German. It was crazy. So our firm was founded on the premise of great talent, great leadership, great impact type of deal, and we actually trademarked the term "leaders who care," which is we do care about hugging, but it's not just about hugging. We care about the value of every individual. Everybody's got value. The importance that you can make money and have purpose at the same time. How did you come to value yourself as a talent agent repping theater clients as a former actress yourself?
Well, I think because I was an actor, I had a lot of compassion when I was an agent because I really understood what the actor's journey was. At the same time, um, as an actor, I learned because I went back to acting after being an agent. I learned a lot more about taking responsibility for your own career. No one should expect an agent to work harder for their career than they do. And I think just being an actor in general, you have to learn how to be independently viable. And you also have to learn how to face rejection. These are really valuable
Hmm.
skills to learn early on. You have to learn how to communicate, put yourself out there, package yourself, face rejection, and stay organized and stay hopeful and stay socialized. So, all of these things I think lead to not just respect for yourself, but respect for others, understanding that teamwork is really important, understanding that no one builds a career alone, that even the most brilliant talent has to have someone along the line to help guide them and shape them. And so I think all of those things combined really helped to shape me into a person that was compassionate but also driven. And I think one of the issues that many creative types have or artists have is sometimes um, not being as driven or motivated when it comes to the business part of their career. they spend a lot of time dedicated to their art or their talent or their sport, but less time dedicated to what it takes to actually make that and monetize that into a career.
Yeah, it's a great point. I know in my personal case, I learned a lot of similar stuff like that in sports. You have your responsibility, your accountability, but also you're playing on a team, and how does that work with respect to personality, with respect to being aligned on let's in this case on ice hockey and so on and so forth, and that um, individuals lead in different ways as coaches, and you got to learn how to work with, I guess, a producer and director. You've got to make the person acting, alongside you better, so they can make you things of that nature. When you were younger, though, because I remember my kids in acting, they learned some great stuff early on, where how to say hello to somebody, how to look somebody in the eye during an audition, and not to have their mental health go down the tube when they said, "Oh, you're not right for this at all," type of thing. How did that
Yep.
evolve for you?
Actually, no, it's interesting you brought that up. So, because I also was a casting director for a little while,
Hmm.
and that was a great experience. Forgive the sirens behind me, New York City. Um, it was a great experience for not feeling bad about myself because when I was sitting behind the table, I would see how little of it had to do with talent and how much of it had to do with being the right type.
Right.
And so, I could see somebody walk into the room. I remember once casting a production of West Side Story, and this guy walked into the room, and the director said, "That's our Tony. I hope he can sing." So and then these other guys came in with brilliant voices, but just didn't have the look. And so when I saw how much of it had to do with just being the director's vision of what the role should look like or sound like, and that we had the most talented people get cut and mediocre people sometimes get cast, it just made me feel so much more aware that it's not really about you. It's simply about who fits overall in the best way. I also had a relationship of mine break up because I never, in my wildest dreams, would have thought that I would compete with this girl. She was 36, tall, blonde, and a belter. I was 19, short, dark, and a soprano. And yet we were both at the very end up for the same role. And I ended up getting it. And she was so angry about it and just really couldn't handle it anymore and just kept screaming that she was better for the role than I was. And the reality is she was 100% better. But the reason she didn't get it is that the person also had to understudy another role that had to tap dance. And I was a better tap dancer. So even though she was better for the main role, I was more malleable and easier to do both. And so that's why they picked me over her. And again, it's not about who's good or bad or right or wrong. It's just it's a lesson you learn. And I think in relationships as well, people are constantly, "Oh, I'm not good enough. He cheated on me. I'm ugly." No, I mean, Christy Brinkley got cheated on. Elizabeth Hurley got cheated on. Doesn't mean you're anything less if somebody wants something else. So I think these are all lessons I learned in acting and in casting, that it's so much about timing and being right for something and not at all to do with your value
Yeah,
or
that's
your.
that's brilliant, brilliant advice. You cannot be defined by what someone else says or thinks or anything like that. And because it can lead to a lot of mental health issues and so many other things. And it's fortunate there are some casting directors that are cool and they treat especially kids well, because I think trauma sticks with you, right? And
Yeah, but it's also individual taste. So I'll give another example. I always wanted to be in Les Mis. That was like a dream when I was a kid. It was like Les Mis. And then I finally had my big audition, and I worked so hard for that audition. I was so prepared. And I walked in, and the man at the time that was in control later got fired. He was so cruel. He looked me up instead of just letting me sing and saying thank you. He looked me up and down and basically said, "You're way too fat to be in my show, but sing if you want." And it was so cruel and horrible. And I left that audition thinking, I'm so fat, I'm never going to get cast in anything. My career is over. Well, 2 years later, he was gone. I auditioned for Les Mis and I got it. So same show, same part, different director. One said I was too fat to be in the show. The other one was like, "You're perfect." So again, it's just so subjective. You can't take it personally.
yeah, and you got to, like, I remember one coach told my son, just think next. That's all you got to think is next. And you keep going. And you know, if you have people around you who can support you, it's a lot easier. But to use it as, you know, I'll go to sports again. Usually, teams that win championships have lost one first, and they use it to learn, and they use it to get drive. That we know what it takes to win. Now we're going to get it. Um, but it's always good to have other people around you, that, if you will, that love you, that this and that can support you in that too, because it's not easy. It's competitive, whether it's, you know, theater or acting or sports or business in general. So good for you for going down that road. I think it's fantastic that you did all those things because you do get to be in someone else's shoes when you're talking to them, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
brilliant, brilliant. How share a little bit more about making and balancing between an economic and a social impact, you know, at the same time. You know, just like in sports again, travel is a factor that can be very bonding, but it's also part of the financial budget of everything that you're traveling as a group, you're traveling as a sports team. You got culture of individuals and teams together a lot. Do you like each other? Do you love each other? Do you hate each other sometimes? And then how do you all make money at the same time of all of this going on?
Well, those are kind of two different things. So,
Well, in a way,
uh,
in the way they are, but if
when
you're
you're making, in terms of making money, like when you're on tour with a show, you're making your money on your salary, that's determined regardless of your travel.
right,
Travel part of it, you are, as you said, you have to become a family or figure out, you know, can you travel nicely with others? Can you save money on travel by being lower maintenance? Like for me, I'm a low maintenance traveler. I just need Wi-Fi and a bed. So I'm perfectly happy at a limited service property. In fact, I prefer them because I get left alone by the service people. I don't have to have somebody help me with my bags. I'm fine with that. I like the free breakfast. I don't actually like the full service, white glove experience, but other people do. And so for me, I can usually travel on a much lower budget than some of my colleagues that want more of the amenities. So that's just understanding. I think though, what you mentioned earlier, where you said, how do you make money and with a social
purpose,
good
right,
social component, I think that's something I learned a lot more in my investing career than in my employee career.
right.
Because as an investor, I was extremely focused and am extremely focused on investing in companies that will make money, but also have a major social good behind them. And I think that, actually, theater is one of those things. Theater can
Mhm.
lose money, but it can make money. But either way, you're investing in something that is going to tell a story. And storytelling is one of the best ways to change culture, hearts, minds, create empathy. So and you can make a lot of money. You can
Did
also
did any of that come up ever? I would assume it did with any special productions where not only are you entertaining people, which is huge in itself, and we need more and more entertaining to make us feel good, but the balance of there's a purpose behind this show. It tells a message, it's telling a story, and we need to make money. Did you ever see that or be involved in that?
beyond. I mean, I was involved with a show where we would get letters to the box office from kids that said, I was planning on killing myself.
Hmm.
And because of your show, I'm not going to because I feel heard or I feel seen or I
Right.
related. I can't tell you how often hearts and minds are changed or parents understand something they just didn't understand, but in seeing it in somebody else's story, they suddenly go, oh, now I understand what my child's trying to say to me. Or now I understand why somebody is choosing this lifestyle that's foreign to me. Um, it's most people in the world are not hateful.
Right.
Most parents in the world do everything they do to protect their children. Sometimes the way they protect their children hurts their children,
Right.
and sometimes they're not aware of it, right? So, for example, a kid that's gay and the parent is just trying so hard for the kid not to be gay because they don't want them to have a hard life, not because they think they're evil or they're
Right.
bad, but they think if my child's gay, they're going to have a harder time, and I want them to have the easiest time. And I think if a kid hears, I love you, I'm upset that you're gay because I don't want it to be harder for you, that's easier to hear than I judge you, or I think something's wrong with you, or I think something's deficient. So I think just sometimes just the ability to to communicate and to see that most people are coming from a place of wanting what's best for you. They just have really different opinions on what that is. Same thing with politics, with the country. Most people want what they think is best for the country. They just have really different ideas about what that is.
Yeah, and it's a way of how you can argue. You know, you made me think of Freddie Mercury and his parents, um, when, you know, with Queen and all that. You know, his dad didn't want him to do that, and he was totally against it and everything, and he had to have, but then he was proud of him at the very end and whatnot. Oh, you're looking
I
brighter.
had to move. I was so dark. I just realized like I was sitting in a dark place. So I've just moved to a brighter room.
Well,
Like,
this is perfect for the series. You know, we went from the dark to the light.
oh, there you go. It's thematic. I didn't even realize.
Exactly. Um, um, you know, we talk a lot about AI, technology, and humanity, and it's been said that the fourth industrial revolution is about AI and tech, but a lot of people are saying the fifth should be about humanity. Um, with that said, can you describe what led you to organizations like the Epic Foundation, or one that I love, and I know Robert Levine very well, the Mary Tyler Moore Foundation? In fact, he was just did something else on our podcast, and we were supporting him, so it was interesting to see that. But how did that happen?
Well, Epic Foundation. So I always wanted to do work in philanthropy. You know, it's since I was 11 years old, I used to give my allowance to St. Jude's. You know, it was just always really important to me. Epic Foundation was super interesting for me because the model there was trying to make giving the norm. And what I mean by that is the founder, a very wealthy man, he decided if I pay for all of the operational overhead of this nonprofit and can create a pathway where people know that all of their donations go solely to the causes, I think I'll help clear the way. But also, so many people choose not to give because they're nervous that the money is not being directed properly, that it's not being allocated correctly, that maybe the nonprofit's not as sound. And so he approached as everything at the Epic Foundation as almost a the way you would do due diligence on a portfolio of venture investments. He would do deep diligence on like 1,000 nonprofits and then select 10 for the year that were thoroughly vetted with white papers, and then he would track their progress. So his idea was to make donors more comfortable that every philanthropic dollar that they had would matter. So I can't even remember who initially introduced me to him, to be honest with you. It was a while back, but when I heard his model, and I knew that all of the nonprofits that he supported helped children, which is always important to me,
Me too.
it just seemed like a really great opportunity. And as for Mary Tyler Moore Foundation, I met Robert through a mutual friend, and I was just so blown away by his dedication, by his true, authentic passion to make a difference. Uh, who doesn't want to support the idea of people not losing their eyesight or their vision from diabetes? Diabetes is a very, very serious illness. There's way too many people losing eyesight, and his idea, Mary Tyler Moore's foundation, was very focused on collaborative science, so that the research would be, instead of siloed, shared and actually push forward to a real cure. Because the problem with commercial science is that everybody has to keep their secret sauce, or else they're not going to get to a commercialization. They're not going to be able to sell that drug later or dominate the market. But that's not good for people. That's good for pharma companies.
Right.
And so his idea was like, let's eliminate the profit out of it as a philanthropic moonshot. Let's try to solve this. And then a pharma company can commercialize it later. So I just was really drawn to his passion, his commitment, his skill, his kindness. And, I just wanted to help in any way I could.
Yeah, that drew me also the first time I met him. We just had him on another thing for us also to talk about it, and going back to you know, people that have impacted you, kind of grew up sort of kind of watching Mary Tyler Moore,
Yeah.
and just what a pioneer in her own right, and stuff like that. So yeah, it's super super cool. So you know, in LA we say I've got to keep them wanting more so that we can do a sequel. So I just have a couple more questions for you, but then we'll have to do a sequel, obviously, and stuff.
Obviously. I can to one. I want a trilogy.
Well, we'll do it. We'll do it in a cafe, eating tapas and stuff, and chill out there at some small hotel over there and whatever. But let's talk about what you're achieving now. So you're the founder of Road Concierge, which was acquired and is now owned by Internova. Um, as a theater producer, as an impact investor, managing director of AKS Family Partners, single family office. You're also another organization, oh, Force Family Office, director of Philanthropy. By the way, when do you sleep?
I don't. I sleep 4 hours a night according to my Aura ring, which I'm no longer wearing because I hated waking up and being told I was poor or failed.
Oh God, which you're not. So I'll introduce you to the circle ring. It's much better, but that's an
No,
ad.
I actually, it's funny. I invested in a company. Now I'm plugging a company, but it's called Healthy AI, and it can do all the things that these digital, like all the watches and wearables can do, but without needing a wearable device. So it's just on my phone now. So I don't have to charge anything when I travel. I can just look at my phone and get all the readouts.
Nice. All right. Well, that's a good
Amazing.
plug. I should get stock for that, just allowing that plug. Like meat, like getting meat, like we said before.
I'm just saying that's a true thing. Like I really do use it now. But no, look, I don't get a lot of sleep, so I would never advise anyone to follow my health regime. I do the opposite of what you're supposed to do. I sleep 4 hours a night. I don't drink water. I drink 12 cups of coffee a day. Here you can show you my giant mug, my Wonder Woman. Uh, I drink alcohol. I'm a terrible. I eat string cheese every day. I'm like I have a whole theory. I have like a processed food theory. I call it the cockroach diet. I
Huh.
feel like, cockroaches are hard to kill because they feast on all that is like disgusting. And
Hmm.
that's kind of like me. So I feel like I'm hard to destroy because I have such a tolerance built up from putting nothing but preservatives and processed food in my system. My doctor disagrees, but I never get sick. So
What a ridiculous doctor. Well, we'll have to help you on that part a little bit. And I do not want to think of you as a cockroach. That is the worst thing. My first time I saw a cockroach was when I moved to Florida, and I was sleeping on a sleeping bag because my furniture hadn't come into a place I bought, and I went to the bathroom in the middle of the night. It was dark, and I turned on the light, and a cockroach looked like Godzilla when I saw him there, and it was
well, think of
crazy.
it more like a Twinkie then. You know how a Twinkie can survive like a nuclear attack
We'll go with
because it's
Twinkie.
all processed and preserved?
Yeah, we'll go
I'm
with
like the
Twinkie.
human version of a Twinkie.
No, I do have the vices of a lot of bread and cheese. I do that too. I do drink alcohol and I do drink a lot of coffee. And I do like, smaller hotels and I do like comfort food and stuff like that. So there you go. And we're still alive, so that's not bad. So tell me what you do now. Tell us a little bit.
Yeah. So my core job, I'm managing director of a single family office. So, you know, growth stage venture investing essentially.
Hmm.
Uh, and then on my own, I'm an angel investor. I do early stage social impact, everything from theater to education to disability tech to health tech, um, to philanthropy tech. And then I do a lot of nonprofit work. I think the project I'm probably most passionate about. I mean, I'm on several boards and they're all amazing. So it's so hard to kind of pick between your babies, if you will.
Yeah.
I think all philanthropy is incredible. If I had a wish in the world, it would be that every single person realizes they can be a philanthropist, even if they don't have money. Um,
Well,
you know,
mostly percentage wise, it's less rich people that give more percentage than it is others, basically, because
and it doesn't always have to be money. You can give of
right,
time, you can give of talent, you can give of ideas. There's so
absolutely,
many ways to give that don't have to involve cash money.
right.
But the project I'm most passionate about it's an animal rescue, and my dog Winston, named after Winston Churchill, my idol,
Smokes a
was
cigar.
the love of my yeah, great cigar, was the love of my life, and in his honor at the animal rescue, we created a building that's specifically designed for victims of domestic violence or people struggling with addiction and mental health to have a safe place to store their pets for a few weeks while they get the help they need. I did not realize until about a year ago how many people don't leave their abusers because the women's shelter can take them but not their pets,
Hmm.
or how many people don't get the help they need with addiction or short-term mental health counseling because they have no place for their pets. And so by giving a safe space for those pets to be, you're helping people and animals, which is just like my complete dream wheelhouse. So that has been my biggest passionate project this year. But I'm also I'm on several charitable boards, and I always work as hard as I can to raise as much money or awareness as possible, or make connections between as many philanthropies, cannot talk, as possible.
Yeah,
Um,
I love that. And somebody asked me some of that, but one that I pick up on, the person that you're helping by taking care of their dog has a whole new trust and love for you for doing that, and makes it even easier, I think, for them to be open to getting the help, because you're right. Otherwise, they just won't accept the help because they love their dog.
yeah, I would never leave my dog with an abusive person. I mean, that the first thing that person might do is try to throw the dog out the window or hurt you through. So you can't. I was so surprised though. I never realized how few shelters took pets. I didn't know that it's a real problem.
I didn't know
And so
either.
something that I want the world to know, because I think every town and community has an animal rescue somewhere and has some sort of organization that helps domestic violence or helps drug addiction, and they should work together. They should collaborate. One of the biggest issues in philanthropy is the lack of working together. And again, it's because they don't want to compete for donor dollars.
Right.
They don't work together because they're afraid that they'll lose their donors to the other organization. But animal rescue is such a different world from addiction. You're unlikely to be sharing the same donor pool. So you can
Hmm.
absolutely collaborate.
Yeah, a big bark out for that, I would say, type of thing. But um, and it's so important. The dogs give so much love and so much everything that it fills our hearts and souls. And we always have these conversations about collaboration and competition. You can have both at the same time. And in fact, it can make you better, to do that. And I think that's first of all, it's kudos for doing all that stuff, and that really shows, not that it was a shocker, you really are a leader who cares. So as that, I got one more question for you, at least now, before the sequel. Um, a client told me, in 2021, this client told me, he said, Mark, the year 2020, the pandemic year, was the year that flew by slowly. And I thought, what a great line. And even today, people feel like it was yesterday and years ago, all at the same time. So now, with that happening, and the last 4 or 5 years zooming by also, and we're already at the end of 2025, which is incredible. What are you most grateful for, and what are you most hopeful for?
Wow. Well, I guess I'm most grateful for health, right? Because without that, you have nothing. And I think the pandemic really showed that. Um,
Yeah.
Also, for me, the pandemic was a game changer in that that was when my travel business got shut down, and that's when I got into the family office space. So my entire career pivot was sort of motivated by COVID, and it devastating my travel business.
Hmm.
What am I most hopeful for? I think I think I'm most hopeful for people like you that will amplify voices that are full of love, and not people that are amplifying all the hate. I'm most hopeful that we can get past this time in our society that's so incredibly divisive, and get back to a time where you could disagree with your friend or your neighbor or your family, and not hate them. I think I'm hopeful. Like Thanksgiving is a time where, people go home, and whew, it can be testing your patience. But I'm really hopeful that people are starting to get back to the thought process of, I don't have to agree with you to care about you. And so I think I'm hopeful that that's starting to pick back up. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But that would be my biggest hope.
Yeah, well, super well said. Well, I'm grateful for having a new friend. That's number one. So that's fantastic.
And a tapas partner.
And a tapas partner. I'll take you up on that. And I'm hopeful, I'm grateful and hopeful for the same thing, that you are also a leader who cares, and that you're authentic and doing positive stuff. Because I do think, like you said, there are more good people out there than not. And I think we're craving, literally craving, I think people are, for being able to disagree, and that's okay. In fact, disagreement is good because then you don't have any different ideas. whatnot, but you don't have to hate people. And so I'm hopeful that a lot of people, including a lot of younger people, um, want to just be happy. Just be happy and do great things and stuff. And I actually think AI may be finally the technology that will make or give us opportunities to be happy. But that's part of the sequel that we'll have to take.
Well,
So
I think that's what we're going to really disagree, but that'll be a fun sequel to argue that one.
okay, we don't have to argue. We can actually discuss it.
Debate and discuss.
Exactly. Thank you for being on the Leaders Who Care series. Thank you for being one. You're awesome. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's really amazing to be invited to be on.